When severe cases of the COVID-19 virus forced families across the globe to restrict their physical socialization and remain indoors, schools had to drastically and immediately transition to a COVID-safe learning environment. This transition required the use of tools such as Zoom, Google Classroom, and Microsoft Teams. By fall 2020, some schools provided hybrid learning environments, which was accomplished by sending half of a school's student population to the physical campus every other day or class period, and meeting as a class on an online platform the other days of the week.
You know, I think I was and we were prepared as anybody else when this happened. You know, I can't say enough about our faculty here in terms of being able to pivot on a dime, our students being able to adjust, staff, student support, residence life, our whole community team being able to adjust to something on the fly. And we did this in a few days span. It was quick, it happened. You know, we were, reactionary in some ways, but also we, were being proactive as we went through the last year, and we've changed things. I mean, our goal was let's safely get to the end of the semester, and then now it's like, okay, how do we safely open in the fall? And here we are, middle of April, moving into getting closer to May. And, I teach a class on Mondays, and, one of the things I said, we only have a couple more weeks left. And a couple of the students said, it's like hard to believe that we're already here. I think with online or hybrid, you have a little more flexibility in terms of learning, in terms of looking beyond maybe a brick and mortar or a classroom. You have that ability to move. Not saying you don't in a traditional kind of face-to-face class, but I think with online hybrid, you have that ability to be out and about and creatively bring in others that may not be able to come traditionally into a classroom. I know I've talked with many of our faculty this past year, bringing in some speakers that normally we want to be able to have come here due to travel, but through Zoom, it's like they're right there with the group. So that was an exciting piece, I think, of one of the benefits that we saw.
Virtual and hybrid learning experiences worked well for some students and not so well for others. COVID has impacted students in many ways, but mostly because of not being able to go to school. The COVID-19 pandemic may worsen existing mental health problems and lead to more cases among children and adolescents because of the unique combination of the public health crisis, social isolation, and economic recession. Write the authors of a study conducted to gauge the mental and emotional health of grade school students at Utopia. COVID has brought many issues to students. It has made them feel depressed, sad, and lonely, and many students have lacked the motivation to do their schoolwork. This has been the case with college students as well. I know that I have felt all these things due to the pandemic. Missing my community college graduation was particularly difficult, and it has been hard to be away from friends.
I think we crave socialization, and if you look back, and I often think about that week in March when it's hard to believe it's been over a year ago now, but I think about that week in March when we made that first shift in learning. But for me, it really is, we are at a place that values community, values that interaction, and I think we continue to have our faculty, students, staff, and our community members hungry for that. And I know we're getting bits and pieces of that back, but doing it safely and cautiously. And I think as we continue to grow and adjust, we're going to see, I think, more creativeness with hybrid delivery, online delivery, face-to-face, traditional face-to-face delivery, in terms of how do we capture that socialization.
One of the issues with online learning is adapting to it. Not all students have taken an online class before.
Education shouldn't depend on your zip code, of what kind of education you get. That's obsolete, and I think we need to change the way we think. Do I think it changes the way we do education? I hope it does, because there's so many great things that came out of this. I know I think right now you have a student joining your class digitally. Well, think about how that changes just a student that gets sick, right? But we've all been there, you're sick, they won't let you come to school, but you can still be in school. Think about how that keeps you learning in spots where you might be sent away, right? If you have a fever, you can't come to school anymore, right? But now you can keep learning. I also think the ability to connect with teachers is phenomenal. That consistent access. I know many schools have gone to, they call them now office hours in K-12 buildings, where for 30 minutes, parents can jump on and ask a teacher a question. That's invaluable, right? Engaging the community and opening up schools, because parents are more supportive of schools that they know what's going on. Students of special needs, I think, have been left behind a bit. As a parent of a student with special needs, I've noticed that immediately. Many online systems are set up where there's a set of things they have to do, right? Well, my son struggles to handle more than one instruction at a time. So if you give him 10 things he has to do in a day, he's still stuck on number 1. He's so overwhelmed with the other 9 that he can't begin. So I think students of special needs and students in IEPs, there needs to be care given to that and how the online systems should work for them.
I think COVID sped some things up, but it also has allowed us to be really creative and allowed some new energy to flow into higher education. It's also one of the things I'll speak to. It's also allowed our accreditors to kind of rethink their outlines and outcomes that they expect from institutions. And that's refreshing in some ways, because traditionally it was this way and then you have this outcome and do that. And we're still changing and we're still growing. And I think, in looking at, courses that you've taken, in the last year, that's a piece of, as you reflect back, and then you reflect back to prior to COVID, how do you compare? And I think when you look at the comparison and we go forward, it really is about that investment, that connection with the faculty member, that connection with your classmates that makes this all work.
It's increased access to museums around the world, and how many things you can now get access to that were just shut off you had to go visit. So now people of poverty, or people who can't travel to these places, now have access to museums and can get in there and see them. And think about how exciting it is. You could go to a country now and walk around digitally and see the sites without actually being there and hear what's going on, or walk in a museum and see the exhibits without being there. Think about the field trips you went on as a kid. That might have changed you. Want to be a scientist because you experienced something, or wanting to go. Like for me, I was an English major when that's what actually I was. And for me to experience a play where now you can actually see a play and you don't have to always be there and experience the things. I know it's not the same thing, but it's better than the alternative, which is nothing. So I think it's opened up opportunities for people to be educated, and the arts can now be more accessible to all, and that excites me.
Unfortunately, that technology that schools provide is often inadequate. Laptops have issues, and the internet connection is not always stable. This makes for difficulties following along with lessons and can be very frustrating. That the school gives usually always have issues, which are frustrating to deal with. As one teacher reported in a USA Today article, about a third of his students experience an outage that cuts into their online learning time. Nearly all of his students are from low-income families, and many can't afford wired broadband service. The system goes down, or someone is working on a tower, or there's too many people on the Wi-Fi hotspot. It cuts out, Lozano explains in USA Today.